made the Georgia Guidestones, by the way? Do we know that?
Some of it's a mystery, some of it we know.
Pseudonym, right?
Right. It was a gentleman. I made a video about this. Yeah, R.C. Christian, and there was a small group of donors, and they had these written, essentially laws for if, like, in the event of a cataclysm in human history was to be reset, and this would be a guidance for how we should proceed.
Yeah.
For years, the Georgia Guidestones confused and creeped people out. A strange stone monument in the middle of nowhere, covered in rules written in different languages. Some thought it was about peace, others feared it was something darker. Then, in 2022, it was blown up, and the mystery only grew.
New details tonight. State investigators released new video showing the moment an explosion tore through a mysterious monument in Georgia.
But now, the truth is finally out, and it's not what people expected. Who built it? Why did they hide? And what were they really trying to say? Join us as we break down the mystery of the Georgia Guidestones and reveal why the truth might be more disturbing than the legends. The monument with strange existence. The Georgia Guidestones stood like a modern-day Stonehenge in rural Elbert County, Georgia for decades. Their origin was cloaked in anonymity, their message laced with mystery, and their destruction in 2022 only deepened public intrigue. But now, newly unearthed documents and digital traces have pointed to a chilling truth. The Guidestones were not merely an art piece or philosophical monument. They were part of a larger ideological agenda, rooted in eugenics and technocratic control. But it all began in 1980, when a massive granite structure rose outside Elberton, Georgia, about 16-foot-tall slabs arranged around a center stone. This was no ordinary sculpture. It was built from 6 slabs weighing nearly 240,000 pounds in total. But that's not all. The stones were commissioned by someone calling himself R.C. Christian, who claimed to represent a small group of loyal Americans planning the project for 2 decades. He picked Elberton for its top-quality granite and rural setting. From the start, locals found Christian odd. He only met with a few people, paid from multiple banks for secrecy, and disappeared after handing over plans and a scale model. No one has since revealed his real identity. The monument was designed not just as a symbol, but as a giant astronomical instrument, a calendar, compass, and clock rolled into one. It featured holes aligned to solstices, Polaris, and a sunbeam piercing the capstone at noon to mark the day of the year. Then there were the inscriptions, 10 guidelines carved on the stones in 8 languages, including English, Spanish, Swahili, Hindi, Hebrew, Arabic, Chinese, and Russian. They offered instructions like, maintain humanity under 500 million, and be not a cancer on Earth. These messages stirred fear. Some saw them as New Age ideals or rational thinking, while others read them as eugenics or a shadowy plan to reduce population under a one-world order. As time went by, the stones drew attention. Tourists visited for their odd symbolism, but conspiracy theories grew fast. The inscriptions and secrecy gave fuel to rumors of Satanism, global elites, and occult agendas. Vandalism became common. People spray-painted slogans like "Death to the New World Order" or accused the monument of being satanic. This led to cameras being installed to protect it. Then came early July 2022, when the unthinkable happened. An explosive device destroyed one of the slabs at around 4 a.m., and later the rest was dismantled by authorities citing safety concerns. Locals were stunned.
Georgia's famous Guidestones no longer standing tonight after the GBI says a group of people tried to blow them up. The blast damaged part of the structure, and within the last hour, crews tore down what was remaining.
With no suspects identified, the monument vanished within hours. But its disappearance only deepened the mystery, as people wondered, who really stood behind this monument, and why did it seem to demand we reduce humanity itself? The answers are mind-blowing, as you'll soon find out. In June 1979, still fresh after exploring the stone's setup, a sharply dressed man showed up in Elberton and introduced himself to Granite Company President Joe Fendley as Robert C. Christian, a name that wasn't his real one. He said he represented a small group of loyal Americans who had planned this project for years and wanted to leave a message for people after some great catastrophe. Fendley was skeptical at first. The man wanted massive slabs cut, engraved, and assembled into an astronomical instrument, a schedule so huge it seemed almost impossible. Yet Christian handed over detailed blueprints and a large deposit. When Fendley saw his commitment, he agreed. He was directed to Wyatt Martin, a banker, who handled the finances in strict secrecy. Only Fendley and Martin ever met Christian. All payments came from different banks and addresses, so no one could trace the person behind the name. Christian disappeared after finalizing the plans. He never showed up again at the site, and to this day, no one knows his real name or where he came from. Some people believe RC refers to Christian Rosenkreutz, founder of the Rosicrucian secret group, pointing to possible occult ties and a hidden global agenda.
The Rosicrucian path is the journey of the mystic. Few souls brave it at any single time. Yet, it is this internal voyage that has rewarded many of our greatest minds with the ability to enrich the world.
Meanwhile, others argue he was probably a private individual with radical ideas about humanity's future rather than a cult member, but no proof has surfaced either way. Then a claim appeared in 2024. CNN reported the real man might have been Herbert H. Kirsten, an Iowa doctor obsessed with overpopulation control who died in 2005. That opened more questions. If Kirsten was Christian, why hide his identity so carefully? Did the beliefs about population control found on the stones match his ideology? Or is it just another theory? What if the man behind the stones was far from a peaceful idealist after all? The guidelines as messages for a post-apocalyptic world. Building on the mystery of who erected the Georgia Guidestones, the real weight of their enigma lies in the 10 carved commandments inscribed on them, guidelines that many found not just strange, but chilling. These messages, carved in 8 major world languages, English, Spanish, Swahili, Hindi, Hebrew, Arabic, Chinese, and Russian, suggested the monument wasn't meant for a single culture or country, but for a future global society. The layout, with 4 massive slabs positioned around a central pillar, gave it an almost sacred feel, like a modern oracle offering wisdom to a post-apocalyptic world. To the casual visitor, the rules might seem like lofty ideals about unity, reason, and sustainability, but to others, the writings felt more like a manifesto for a cold, calculated reset of humanity. Now, this is where it gets shocking. The most infamous of the 10 rules was the very first one. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. That single sentence turned an otherwise idealistic tone into something dark and unnerving. When the monument went up in 1980, the global population had already passed 4 billion, making the number on the stone seem not just unrealistic, but apocalyptic. Considering Earth's population was over 4 billion in 1980, that shockingly meant nearly 90% of people would need to disappear. The implication was impossible to ignore. If this message was meant to guide future generations, then the present world had to be dramatically reduced. Whether it was intended as a warning, a prophecy, or a chilling prescription for the future, it invited questions about who had the right to decide who lives and who doesn't. The rest of the inscriptions didn't help soften the unease. Calls to guide reproduction wisely, prize truth, and rule passion with reason might have sounded noble, but in context, they hinted at strict population control, engineered social values, and a world steered not by empathy, but cold rationality. Coupled with the anonymity of the creators and their evident desire to reach across cultural and linguistic boundaries, the monument came across less like a humanitarian effort and more like a blueprint for a controlled utopia, or dystopia, depending on your lens. And with no one officially stepping forward to take credit, the suspicion only grew that the stones were less about peace and wisdom, and more about power and quiet control. Inscriptions 2 and 3 only intensified the unease among those who read the stones. The second commandment, guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity, struck many as a clear echo of eugenics. The idea of engineering better humans rather than allowing reproduction to unfold naturally. Critics saw this as a prescription for selective breeding, selective sterilization, or state-directed control over who may reproduce, eerily reminiscent of historical atrocities and population management programs. Following that, the third guideline, unite humanity with a living new language, was viewed by some as utopian idealism. Others interpreted it as cultural erasure and a tool for centralizing global control through linguistic conformity under a one-world government framework. The Middle Commandments portrayed a vision of a tightly governed global society. Guideline 4 urged ruling passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason, an assertion that faith and tradition should yield to reason and control, a stance that many religious observers found threatening. The fifth and sixth insisted on fair laws and courts and resolving international disputes in a world court, hinting at the eclipse of national sovereignty in favor of centralized global legal authority. Commandment 7, avoid petty laws and useless officials, and 8, balance personal rights with social duties, further painted a picture of a rationalized system where individual freedom is secondary to collective order. The final two inscriptions attempted to shift tone towards spirituality and environmental stewardship, but even they carried an edge. Guideline 9, prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite, might sound poetic, but in context felt patronizingly ideological, hinting at a narrow definition of human values. And the 10th, be not a cancer on the earth, leave room for nature, reinforced the genocidal implications of the first commandment, depicting humanity as a plague to be curtailed. Viewed together, these tenets blended appeals to reason, spirituality, and ecology, but critics feared they masked a blueprint for forced population reduction and technocratic domination. But there's something about the first rule that is hard to shake off. Keep watching to find out. That first rule, maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature, was the lightning rod that set the entire monument ablaze with controversy. While some intellectuals like Yoko Ono praised the Guidestones as a stirring call to rational thinking, many others recoiled at what seemed like a blunt, inhuman directive. To critics, it wasn't just unsettling, it was terrifying. The idea of needing to reduce the population by billions triggered fears of covert depopulation agendas. Religious groups labeled the monument satanic, with some calling it the 10 Commandments of the Antichrist. Others saw it as an occult proclamation from globalist elites with chilling ambitions, using poetic language to mask authoritarian intent. Naturally, conspiracy theorists dove in headfirst. The language about genetic fitness, world courts, and shared governance seemed to echo the rhetoric of one-world government schemes long feared by anti-globalist circles. For these critics, the Guidestones weren't just mysterious, they were evidence. They saw the anonymous R.C. Christian as a pseudonym for a network of influential insiders working quietly to lay out a post-collapse blueprint, with mass elimination as a necessary step toward planetary balance. The secrecy surrounding the sponsors only added fuel to the fire. With no one stepping forward to clarify the intent or deny the darker interpretations, suspicion turned into belief for many. Yet, not everyone buys the dystopian take. Scholars and some investigators argue that the monument's language was meant to be symbolic, even aspirational. They interpret the 10 inscriptions as philosophical guidelines for a hypothetical future, a civilization rising from the ashes of catastrophe, urged to avoid past mistakes. From this view, the population target was not a mandate, but a cautionary number meant to highlight the limits of Earth's resources. After all, the stones offered no enforcement plan, no tools for implementation, just ideals carved in granite. Still, That's precisely what made them so unnerving. The fine line between utopia and dystopia was left open to interpretation, with no author to clarify which side we were meant to stand on. The bomb, the cover-up, and what followed. As we've seen how the messages sowed fear, next we turn to how those fears came alive when the Guidestones were destroyed, and what happened afterwards.
A monument considered by some conservative Christians to be satanic was badly damaged by an explosive device. One of the 4 granite panels on the Georgia Guidestones monument was reduced to rubble.
It started in the early hours of July 6, 2022, around 4 a.m., when someone planted a bomb at the base of the monument. Surveillance cameras caught the blast and showed a car speeding off soon afterwards. Immediately after the explosion, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation declared the device had been planted deliberately. One of the 19-foot slabs shattered into fragments, and the capstone cracked under the force. Because the monument became unstable, local officials ordered the rest torn down later that same day for safety reasons. What remained was scraped away and hauled off, leaving only rubble behind. Residents in Elberton felt a sense of loss. The mayor called it heartbreak, anger, and frustration because the Guidestones had become part of the town's legacy and a tourist draw. Moreover, the site generated substantial income, around 20,000 visitors each year, making its loss both symbolic and economic. For many locals, the stones reflected the county's granite craftsmanship and identity. Law enforcement shared grainy video clips showing a lone figure placing the device and a silver sedan fleeing the scene. But no suspects were ever named or motive revealed. Investigators still insisted there were leads, but as months passed, they offered no new public updates. The case remains open, but so far, no arrests or charges have surfaced. It gets even more interesting, and you'll soon see why. During political debates earlier that year, a far-right candidate for governor had called the stones satanic evil and included their demolition in her campaign promises. Her rhetoric may have inspired someone, but was it enough to spark actual violence? As online conspiracy theories multiplied, some voices even celebrated the destruction. Alex Jones said he enjoyed the bombing, calling the Guidestones an evil edifice, while others treated it like proof of deep depopulation plans. Meanwhile, the hand-carved granite pieces were moved to a secure, undisclosed location. County officials returned the land to its prior owner and donated the stones to the local Granite Association, though their future use remains undecided. Through this chain of events, from bomb to cleanup, political provocation to silence from investigators, the Guidestones vanished physically. But the questions about who was behind it and why still haunt the place. New evidence emerged in early 2024 when CNN published a theory that R.C. Christian was in fact Herbert H. Kirsten, an Iowa doctor who died in 2005. This claim came from a banker's documents, showing addresses and bookkeeping that pointed to Kirsten's identity. When you learn Kirsten wrote and spoke about controlling population, promoted eugenics, and supported uglier causes like David Duke's presidential bid, the Guidestones' message about limiting humans to 500 million gains a chilling new edge. Moreover, Kirsten was linked to William Shockley, the infamous eugenicist. He praised genetic purity and fitness in his writings, ideas directly mirrored in inscriptions like "Guide reproduction wisely." This side of his biography shattered the idea that the Guidestones were a benign survival guide. Instead, they appeared as an extension of real-world extremist beliefs, carefully hidden behind a polished pseudonym. As investigators and journalists dug deeper, they realized that the financial secrecy, aliases, and vague group references weren't harmless eccentricities. They were protective cover for dangerous ideology. Yet beyond the identity reveal, no group has claimed the stones. The mystery, small group of loyal Americans remains unknown. That ambiguity now looks less quirky and more deliberate, a way to spread extreme ideas without accountability. Meanwhile, academics and fact-checkers, who once framed the Guidestones as philosophical prompts, had to face a hard truth. The man behind them was tied to race-based theories and controlling human lives. Still, even with Kirsten identified, there's no official confirmation. Many details rely on leaked documents and inference. But if CNN's theory is right, the monument was conceived by someone with extremist, not idealistic beliefs. But here's an interesting and thought-provoking question. Does that mean the destruction was justified or simply a drastic response to conspiracy-fed fear? That question lingers as journalists fail to uncover a clear motive or group behind the bomb. Today, the Guidestones story is no longer about mystery alone. It's a case study in how charismatic anonymity can cloak real horrors, and how symbolic messages can conceal disturbing intentions. Ultimately, the more we learn, the darker the narrative becomes. What once sounded like global wisdom now reflects a worldview that many find not just disturbing, but dangerous. As we uncover the truth behind the Guidestones turned darker, it's time to examine their surprising second life long after the stones were gone. The Guidestones may no longer stand in Georgia, but in 2025 they've re-emerged online, taking on digital forms far beyond mere ruins. Initially seen as a philosophical monument, they're now hosted in a Berlin-based non-profit's hyper-realistic 3D replica, letting anyone explore each engraved guideline from anywhere in the world. Moving on from stone to the internet, the inscriptions have been minted as NFTs, digital tokens that can be owned, traded, and even displayed on the blockchain, turning philosophy into property. An AR app now lets users visit Georgia and unlock the Guidestone texts in augmented reality, turning real-world spaces into ethical puzzles inspired by the original message. This digital revival blends activism, tech, and art, yet critics wonder, are these uses turning toxic ideology into trendy content? The mix of ethical debate with commerce has drawn both fascination and concern. The Guidestones have been regarded as a post-apocalyptic folklore relic and a set of stone pillars that have a guide for rebuilding the world after the apocalypse, highlighting how they've become a myth as much as a monument. It is also believed to be America's folklore, reflecting on how they shaped what many envision as a post-apocalypse moral code, now warped by digital fixation. The digital comeback has stripped away the mystery but amplified the message. What once caused fear now fuels memes, apps, online debates, and branded products. Though the original stones were labeled sinister, in 2025 they're mostly spoken of as ethical provocations, yet the unsettling roots behind them still cast a shadow over their digital rebirth. By turning the Guidestones into collectibles, chatbots, and virtual installations, the strange tale continues, proving that even a destroyed monument can live on, reshaped by the values and fears of a new era. Do you think the whole mystery has been resolved, or there's more that remains hidden? Let us know in the comments section. We hope you enjoyed watching this video. Remember to like, share it, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.